Yes, it was. For the simple reason that the president in this kind of situations is always sought to build a consensus rather than compromise.
Most Kenyans are asking, will it apply to the current loans that they have, or will it only apply to new loans that they're taking?
It's not clear. We are still waiting for the central bank and treasury to provide two kinds of guidelines. Number one is whether it's applicable to existing obligations, or number two, whether it's effective immediately or there's some time to it. Yeah.
How do you see this affecting banks themselves?
So the two ways to it. Number one is the spread is going to narrow, definitely, because then you got risk pricing have been capped, but the floor has been set on the cost of funds, so you got a spread in between is going to narrow. Number two is that the profitability, obviously this is going to boil down to the bottom line. So the big return on shareholder funds that we've seen over the last couple of years is probably going to come under pressure, especially starting this year.
What sort of response are we expecting from the banks?
I think we are not going to see any response immediately. I think banks are going to have to sink this in. They're going to take some time. They're going back to the strategy board, review these, depending on their niche. They're going to have a couple of weeks before they start reacting. But I think there are actually 4 adjustments that banks need to do immediately to their business models. Number one is they have to match fund their assets, because the biggest problem that one of the biggest risks that banks have today in this market is what we call the repricing risk. The repricing risk simply means that you've got a 5-year loan, but you've extended that 5-year loan with a 3-month deposit. So eventually what happens is that you are exposed to repricing risks. Now, under the old scenario, because we're in a new era, under the old era, banks could easily pass on the additional costs of that risk to the consumer. And that's why that's partly one of the reasons why we have elevated lending rates. Now that they are not able to easily pass on the additional costs, and in fact it's been capped, they're going to have to take in those risks. So they're going to have, it's part of taking that risk, they have to rematch their book. And number two is that they're going to have to lay off. They're going to have to lay off, and I think I see this happening as early as Q4.
As early as Q4?
Yeah, we're going to have, when the set of Q3 results coming in, Q4 comes in, we're going to see some stress. They have to do it. And number three, we're going to have to see banks also reviewing the boards. I think they have to do that, because if I look at some of the banks we have today, is the boards are not, there are very few career bankers. They're going to have to put in more career bankers, because there's a new era, there's a new legislation. What I'm saying here is that interest income that we've seen, and about 70% of banks' revenues are from interest income. Yeah. Now, interest income going forward from today, it's going to be a volume driven rather than margin driven. They're going to have to sit down and figure out how to volume